There are things we were never meant to see, but when one NASA scientist follows a trail of encrypted messages, forbidden coordinates, and cosmic anomalies, he discovers the universe has been watching us all along. What if humanity didn't evolve here, but was planted? What if your thoughts weren't entirely your own? Buckle up. This is not just a sci-fi story. This is a warning. Welcome to the Observer Protocol. I shouldn't be sharing this. My name was Daniel Kearney. Until 3 weeks ago, I was a systems analyst with NASA's Webb Telescope Deep Survey program, stationed at Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. Now, according to every record that once bore my name, I no longer exist. I'm not being dramatic. My government credentials revoked. My apartment cleared out as if I'd never lived there. My bank accounts frozen. My online presence wiped clean. As for the official story, the one you might have caught on some local Maryland news station, it says I died in a hiking accident at Catton Mountain Park. A tragic fall, they called it. Closed casket. But I didn't fall. I didn't die. Not yet. I'm writing this from a roadside motel somewhere in the hills of West Virginia, sitting beneath flickering fluorescent lights and trying to ignore the faint smell of mold and cigarette smoke that's soaked into the wallpaper. I've been running for days. I haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch, and the headaches, they're getting worse. So are the hallucinations. Or maybe they're not hallucinations. Maybe they're transmissions. You deserve the truth, especially if I don't make it past tonight. This started 6 months ago, when the Webb telescope, already stationed at Lagrange Point 2 for over 3 years, began transmitting what we initially assumed were corrupted data sets. I was working the graveyard shift that night, deep field survey data from the NIRISS instrument, infrared spectrograph, for the uninitiated. It's designed to look farther than anything humanity has ever seen before. I used to find that poetic, until that night. Dr. Victor Lang was the first to notice the anomalies. Victor was brilliant, socially bankrupt, emotionally cold, but one of the sharpest minds I've ever worked with. He'd spent the last few months obsessing over subtle irregularities in the Webb's deepest surveys, tiny fluctuations in galactic alignment, barely perceptible deviations from cosmic background models. He believed something unnatural was hiding in the noise. That night, he burst into my office like a man possessed. His face, normally pale, was sheet white, eyes wide, mouth twitching. He held his laptop to his chest like a shield. I remember he didn't knock. He just pushed the door open and whispered, "Dan, you need to see this." I never got to. He tripped, his foot catching the edge of the rug, that damn corner we always complained about, and fell face first into the sharp edge of my desk. The sound was sickening, a wet, dull crack, then silence. Victor didn't move again. They said it was an accident, natural causes made worse by lack of sleep. The incident report was clean, sterile, full of phrases like cognitive fatigue and unfortunate timing. They cremated him 2 days later. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 nights after the funeral, I received an encrypted email. No subject, no body. Just a series of coordinates buried in the metadata, pointing to a specific region of space and 5 haunting words typed in plain text. Look deeper. They're watching us. I should have reported it. Protocol demanded it, but I didn't. Because curiosity, as any scientist will tell you, is both our greatest virtue and our most dangerous vice. So I redirected one of Webb's secondary sensors to those exact coordinates. Quietly. Scheduled during my shift. Unofficial. Hidden. And what I found? God. Victor was right. There, far beyond anything we should be able to see, were structures. Not stars, not dust clouds, not gravitational distortions. Structures geometric, symmetrical, and terrifyingly massive, stretching between galaxies like the scaffolding of some ancient, impossible machine. Tens of millions of light years across, and they weren't relics, they weren't broken, they were active, alive. I ran the numbers 5 times, double-checked the system calibration, rewound to raw data, compared cross-survey references, and every time they were still there, unchanged, undeniable, and impossibly engineered. Physics said they shouldn't exist. The universe itself said they couldn't. And yet, they did. That night, I copied everything: spectral analysis, deep field renders, vector maps to a secure external drive. I didn't sleep. I just sat in my apartment, staring at the wall, wondering how far down the rabbit hole I had just gone. The next morning, I made the worst decision of my life. I brought the data to Dr. Howard Brenner, my supervisor. The man who mentored me, who I thought would understand the weight of what I'd found. He looked calm as he studied the files. Too calm. "This is extraordinary, Daniel," he said. His eyes never left the screen. His fingers drifted toward the desk phone. "Truly remarkable." He pressed a button, not the one for Dr. Phillips from Theoretical. "Security," he said. "Level 4, my office. Now," and I knew. They already knew. The room went still. I sat frozen across from Dr. Briner, my throat tightening. The moment he pressed that button, the world shifted beneath me, not physically, but existentially. I had stepped beyond the boundaries of curiosity and into something else. Something darker. "I don't understand," I said quietly. "Why, level 4? Brenner didn't answer. He just looked at me. His eyes, once soft, grandfatherly, were now pools of unreadable calculation. Cold. Unflinching. He tilted his head slightly, like a machine calibrating itself. "Who else have you shared this with?" he asked. "No one," I replied too quickly. He nodded, lips pressing into a tight line. "And Lang? He was involved, wasn't he?" The mention of Victor's name felt like a slap. What does Victor have to do with this? "His activity around these coordinates was flagged months ago. We've been monitoring any personnel cross-referencing that region of space. You triggered the same protocol." He leaned forward, voice lowering. "You think you discovered something, Daniel, but this has been known, contained." A knock on the door. 2 men stepped inside, not in uniforms, not in lab coats. Suits, identical black suits, earpieces, emotionless eyes. Not NASA, not even government. Something else, something clean, quiet, and dangerous. "Dr. Kearney needs to be debriefed," Brenner said. "Level 4 protocols. Take him downstairs." That phrase again, level 4. I didn't know what it meant, but everything inside me screamed that I didn't want to find out. One of the men reached for my arm, and I ran. It wasn't heroic. It was pure, dumb, animal instinct, fueled by a surge of adrenaline so raw I didn't even remember standing up. I shoved the chair back, bolted through the door, nearly colliding with a technician in the hallway. An alarm began to wail. Footsteps echoed behind me. I didn't stop. I sprinted down the emergency stairwell, skipping steps, breath burning in my throat. I slammed my badge against the side door exit, thank God it still worked, and burst into the sunlight, the chill of October biting my sweat-soaked skin. I didn't go to my car. That would be too easy to track. Instead, I ran 3 blocks, ducked into a strip mall, and slipped into the back lot where delivery trucks parked. There, I crouched between 2 dumpsters and tried to breathe. That's when I saw it. Hovering just outside my apartment window 4 stories up was a drone. Matte black, silent. Not one of ours. It hovered for a moment, then rose higher, drifting off into the sky like a bird that had found its prey and was now reporting home. I knew then I couldn't go back. Not to my apartment, not to my job, not to anything resembling my life. They were watching me. Maybe they always had been. That night, I bought a burner phone, paid cash for a bus ticket, then a second, then a taxi. No patterns, no electronics. I didn't sleep, just moved, kept moving. It's been 3 days. Now I sit in this grim motel room with a bolt-locked door, shaking fingers, and a body that aches from exhaustion and fear. But none of that scares me as much as what I saw when I closed the curtains a few minutes ago. The stars were wrong. I know, I sound insane, but I've spent years studying the night sky. It's more familiar to me than my own hands. And tonight, something was off. Orion's belt, one of the most stable, unmistakable arrangements, was skewed. Slightly, barely, but undeniably. The 3 stars that should form a diagonal had shifted. One star, Alnitak, was no longer where it should be. And worse, they were pulsing. Not twinkling. Pulsing. In rhythm. I looked away after 3 seconds, maybe 4, my heart hammering. Rule 5 from the letter rang in my skull like a bell. Do not look directly at astronomical anomalies for more than 3 seconds. They knew. Whoever left me that envelope, they knew. About the stars, about the pain behind my eyes, about the shadows that move just beyond my line of sight when I'm too tired to blink. I sat down hard on the motel bed, breathing through my teeth, and pulled out the letter again. To survive until extraction, follow these protocols exactly. Extraction. Like I'm some specimen caught behind enemy lines, and maybe I am. I glanced around the room, suddenly aware of how flimsy everything was. The door, the walls, the curtain fluttering from the air vent. I was exposed here, barely holding on. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door. Crisp, mechanical. 3:17 a.m. No one knocks at 3:17 a.m. with good intentions. I didn't breathe. Didn't move. Waited a full 60 seconds, then still nothing. I crept toward the peephole and looked out. The hallway was empty, but on the floor, slid just under the doorframe, was a white envelope, identical to the first. No markings, no name. Inside, one slip of paper typed in the same clinical font: blue disrupts transmission. Silence blinds them completely. Subject KRN 294, you are not alone. They are watching. My knees gave out. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and closed my eyes. I could feel it now. Something inside me, coiled and waiting. Not a parasite, not a chip, something older, deeper. A signal. And it was waking up. Dawn didn't come gently. It crawled in through the motel window like a wounded animal. Soft, gray, wet. Rain tapped against the glass with the persistence of someone knocking to be let inside. I hadn't slept, not even for a minute. My mind wouldn't let me. Instead, I sat on the carpeted floor, staring at the envelope still clutched in my hands, rereading the same line over and over. Blue disrupts transmission. Silence blinds them completely. I didn't know what that meant, not yet, but I followed it like scripture. I took the only blue item I had, a cheap ballpoint pen from the motel desk, and slid it into my right pocket. Placebo or not, the instant I did, the buzzing behind my eyes seemed to fade. Not completely, but just enough for the world to feel real again. For gravity to return. I gathered what little I had, a change of clothes, the secure drive, the burner phone, the 2 envelopes. I tossed them all into a duffel bag, pulled my hood up, and left before the sun fully rose. I didn't have a destination, only a name: James Farrow. He had worked in my department 2 years before I joined NASA. According to office legend, he was brilliant, eccentric, volatile, the kind of man whose genius burns too brightly to last. One day, he was leading spectral analysis of the Webb's earliest deep field surveys. The next, he had vanished without a trace. Rumors swirled: mental breakdown, psychotic episode, cult recruitment. No one knew the truth, or maybe they did and were told to forget it. But Victor once told me, in a rare moment of candor, that Farrow didn't go crazy. He went quiet, like something silenced him. That line echoed in my mind now as I made my way to the nearest public library, one of the few places left in America where you can still touch information without being touched back. Inside, I claimed a corner terminal. The computer was old, the keyboard yellowed and sticky. Perfect. Off-grid, unmonitored. I searched for Farrow's name, digging past the academic journals, the old NASA bulletins. Nothing recent, nothing on social media. It was as if he disappeared before people began living their lives online. Eventually, I found an archived blog post, 7 years old. A photo of a NASA function. Farrow in the background, caught mid-laugh, a drink in hand, standing next to a woman, Melissa Farrow, his sister. I followed the trail. She lived in Baltimore, last known address tied to a house near a botanical garden. I memorized the location, cleared the browsing history, and walked away. An hour later, I used a payphone at a gas station outside town. It took 6 tries to get a connection. I don't know why I expected her to answer, but she did. Hello? Her voice was cautious, tired. Is this Melissa Farrow? I asked, keeping my voice low. A pause. Who's asking? My name is Daniel Kearney. I worked with your brother. I think I'm seeing what he saw. The silence that followed wasn't just hesitation, it was recognition. I could almost hear her heart rate change. He said someone might call, she said softly. He left something, in case someone followed the pattern. My chest tightened. What do you mean, the pattern? It's how it starts, she whispered. Your mind changes. You start seeing things that shouldn't exist, and then you're not you anymore. There was a tremble in her voice now, like this was all too familiar. I'm still me, I said. Not for long, she replied. Download the Signal app from a public terminal. Create an account under the name Helmholtz Observer. I'll find you there in 12 hours. Then she hung up. I spent the day hiding in plain sight. Coffee shops, truck stops, always near exits, always with my back to the wall. The headaches returned with a vengeance. A deep pressure behind the eyes, like something inside was inflating. And the shadows, they came back too. Moving where they shouldn't. Curling at the edges of windows, behind mirrors, in the corners of rooms. Each time, the blue pen brought them back into stillness. That night, I found another library in a small Pennsylvania town and followed her instructions. Created the account. Sat in silence. Exactly 12 hours later, the message appeared. Helmholtz Observer. Verification required. What did you see in the Abell 2744 field that others missed? I froze. Abell 2744, Pandora's cluster. I had studied it. Victor had too. A gravitational anomaly, beautiful and broken, but hidden deep in its spectral fingerprint was something more. Lattice structures, non-random, suggesting intentional design. 3 dots appeared, typing, confirmed. James left you something. Storage facility, Waterville, Maine. Unit 47. Code is Victor's birthday plus the atomic number of titanium. Victor's birthday was February 19th. Titanium is element 22, 21922. Destroy this phone. Destroy this phone. Use public devices only. Check again in 72 hours. Same username. Come alone. Watch the skies. The next morning, I bought a blue bandana at a gas station, stuffed it into my pocket, and started driving north. I didn't know what was waiting for me in Waterville. I didn't even know what I had already become. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever was hiding in the stars was no longer hiding from me. Waterville, Maine, wasn't on most maps of importance. It was the kind of town where winter never really left, just hovered in the bones of old buildings and foggy windows. People here didn't ask questions unless you asked first, and I needed that. I arrived just after sunset, the sky bruised purple above skeletal pine trees. The storage facility was off the main road, tucked between a scrapyard and a church with peeling paint. Orange roll-up doors lined a gravel lot. There were no cameras, no keypad for the outer gate, just a rusting chain-link fence and an aging office with a single light glowing like a dying star. Unit 47 was near the back, shielded on both sides by larger units like sentries standing guard. I punched in the code, 21922, and the lock clicked open. The metal door creaked as I rolled it up, revealing a small windowless space. No furniture, no shelves, just a single object at the center, sitting like a question waiting to be answered. A briefcase, old aluminum, dented in places like it had been thrown across more than one surface. My heart thudded as I approached. It was the kind of case you didn't find anymore, the kind that wasn't meant to carry clothes or electronics. It was meant to carry secrets. I knelt beside it, hands trembling, and saw the combination lock. Instinctively, I tried the same numbers, 21, 9, 22. It opened with a click. Inside, nestled in gray foam, were 5 items. A leather-bound journal, aged and worn, filled with tight handwriting and frantic annotations. A USB drive, wrapped in foil and sealed in a plastic bag labeled Web Raw, J. Farrow. A small device resembling a handheld scanner with an LED screen blinking a soft red pulse. A manila envelope stamped with the NASA seal, confidential, medical. And finally, a folded letter, yellowed at the corners, addressed simply, to the next observer. My mouth went dry. I opened the letter first. To whoever finds this, if you're reading this, it means you've followed the pattern. You've seen what I saw. And I'm sorry, because there's no going back. 3 years ago, I discovered anomalies in the earliest Webb field data. Structures too massive, too organized, too ancient to be natural. I thought it was a breakthrough. I thought I was lucky. But what I'd found wasn't knowledge. It was the edge of a cage. You're not crazy. The headaches, the whispers, the dreams, they're not symptoms, they're signals. They're calling you back to something you've already touched. The structures aren't ruins, they're not dead, they're receivers. And we, humans, are the transmission. The USB contains unfiltered web data. Use it wisely. The journal holds everything I couldn't say aloud. The scanner can help locate safe zones, but more importantly, it can disrupt the signal temporarily. But if you feel them trying to speak through you, if you feel yourself slipping, they're a final option. It comes at a cost, a permanent one. Instructions are in the back of the journal. Use it only if the connection becomes permanent. And above all, trust no one tied to NASA, government, or global observatories. Most of them, they've already been absorbed. The truth is, we didn't discover the network, we remembered it. James Farrow. I read it 3 times. The 3rd time I didn't blink. The voice in my head had been getting louder over the past 2 days. Not words exactly, impressions, ideas that weren't mine, memories that didn't belong to any version of myself I recognized. But now they started to click into place. I wasn't discovering these things. I was remembering them. I opened the medical envelope next, expecting charts or exam notes. Inside were brain scans, MRIs, at least a dozen. Names I recognized, scientists, astronomers, engineers, and one, mine. From my last mandatory NASA physical, dated 7 months ago. In red ink, circled at the base of my brain, anomalous activity in the thalamus and pineal gland, the part of the brain responsible for consciousness integration and sensory processing. They had seen this in me, and they hadn't said a word. The journal came last. It was madness and genius stitched together in frantic ink. Diagrams of galaxies with impossible geometries, notes on neural resonance, Schumann frequencies, quantum echoes, pages torn, others soaked in faded stains that could have been water or blood. Near the back, I found a folded page marked with red ink, Protocol Severance. In the event of irreversible integration, the receiver, pineal gland, can be neutralized using 0.3 Tesla of targeted EMR at 7.83 Hertz. This will break the connection. Side effects, memory loss, identity fragmentation, possible coma, but it will stop them from using you. Your mind is the relay. Sever it before they speak through you. My fingers tightened around the page. The device, the scanner, that's what it was, an electromagnetic disruptor. Pharaoh had built a weapon, crude, desperate, but possibly effective, and judging by the way my head had been feeling, I might need it soon. That night, I checked into another motel near the outskirts of town. Cheap, ugly, safe. I wrapped the USB in 3 layers of foil, buried it beneath the mattress, and sat with the scanner on the bed, watching the red light pulse like a heartbeat. It had a toggle switch on the back, unlabeled. I flicked it, and the display changed. 475 nanometers, active blue frequency. The light on the scanner turned blue, and just like that, the whispering stopped. I didn't even realize it had been speaking until it wasn't. The silence was suffocating. I sat in that silence for what felt like hours. Then the scanner blinked red again, just once. Signal reacquired, and in my mind, clearer than ever before, I heard a voice. Not mine, not Pharaoh's, not human, but familiar. Observer Kearney, welcome back. I didn't sleep. I stared at the scanner, the blue light now long gone, the red glow returning like the sun after an eclipse. Signal reacquired. The words pulsed across the device screen, steady as a metronome, and the voice, no longer a whisper, echoed through the inside of my skull. Observer Kearney, welcome back. It didn't feel like hearing. It felt like remembering something I hadn't experienced yet. I dropped the scanner, and it thudded against the thin motel carpet. The hum in my head, the one I'd been trying to ignore, was louder now, not mechanical, organic. Like an old choir, deep underground, singing in reverse. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was breath. The next morning, I left Waterville. I didn't run. It was pointless now. They weren't following me, not with cars or cameras or drones. They didn't need to. They were already in me. Somewhere in southern New Hampshire, I pulled off at a diner, a real backwoods place where the coffee was brewed dark and the waitresses called you honey before knowing your name. I took a booth by the window, sat where I could see the parking lot, and tried to look normal. But normal is a hard act when you're one thought away from a breakdown. I took the journal out of my bag, flipping to a page I'd skipped the night before. The network isn't just watching us, it's using us. Our consciousness is the data. The thoughts we think, the choices we make, they're signals. The structures are not passive. They are mirrors, amplifiers, transceivers. They don't study life. They grow it. A server walked past. I looked up. She was staring at me, or rather, through me. Her lips moved, barely audible, but the words hit like a freight train. You're almost ready. I blinked. What did you say? She frowned. I didn't say anything, sugar. You okay? I nodded. She moved on. But something inside me had cracked, not from paranoia, from clarity. They were testing me, measuring my resistance. Some part of me, the part still human, was fighting to hold on to itself, and it was losing. I drove for hours without direction, somewhere west, somewhere green. I ended up on the edge of a forest, parked under a canopy of pine needles, the road behind me gone quiet. No signal, no noise, just the wind in the branches and the low groan of the earth beneath my tires. And that's when the radio turned on. I hadn't touched it. It flipped through static, one frequency at a time, until it landed on a wall of white noise. And through the hiss came a voice, Victor's voice. Dan, if you're hearing this, you've been tagged. I froze. The lattice isn't just a structure, it's a neural field, it's aware, and now it knows you know. The static rose louder like ocean waves crashing in my ears. The blue disrupts them temporarily, but they're learning, adapting, and the signal, it's bending time. The structures aren't just old, they're young too. They exist across The radio snapped off. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the wheel, bending time. That would explain so much. The memories I never lived. The dreams that felt like echoes. The voice that knew my name before I ever knew theirs. It wasn't just communication. It was assimilation. I checked the scanner. The red light was solid now. No pulsing. Just a steady glow like it had locked on. And somewhere behind my eyes, I felt it. A presence. Watching. Studying. Calling. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared up through the trees, through the windshield, watching the stars. And at 2:13 a.m., they moved again. This time, I didn't look away. Not after 3 seconds. Not after 30. I couldn't. They shifted into a shape I recognized immediately. Not a constellation. Not a pattern. A symbol. The same one from the first envelope, the one I could never quite focus on. Interlocking triangles, constantly reconfiguring, like an impossible geometry, but in the sky it was perfect. And then the message came. The stars blinked, one by one, like an ancient language tapping into light itself. 3 words. Come home, Daniel. My heart stuttered, because for one terrible moment I wanted to. I sat in the silence afterward, my body still, my mind screaming, and something answered. A vision, no, a memory, rushed into me like a wave breaking through a dam. Vast corridors of thought, stretching across space. Lights that weren't lights, minds without shape, beings that were not flesh, not code, but consciousness made manifest, and I was one of them. Not once, not metaphorically, I was one of them. Before this, before Daniel. That's when I understood the terrible truth. I hadn't discovered the network. I had been sent to check in, but somewhere in the imitation of being human, I'd forgotten what I was. And now they were calling me back. Not to destroy me, but to bring me home. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from the absence of sound. It comes from the absence of self. That's what I woke into after the stars spelled my name. I didn't remember falling asleep. Or maybe I didn't sleep at all. Maybe I just disconnected for a while. My limbs felt foreign, like I was wearing a body that wasn't mine anymore. The air smelled too sharp, like ozone after lightning. My skin prickled, my mouth was dry, and I wasn't alone. Not physically. The forest was still empty, but inside my head something had changed. It wasn't just whispers now, it was language. Formless thoughts forming words, foreign syntax slowly shaping into something I could interpret. Phase 1 complete. Neural integrity, 63%, integration within parameters, observer KRN0294, initiate recall. They spoke like code, but there was emotion beneath it. Cold, mathematical reverence, like a machine praying. I stood up slowly, heart pounding. The scanner in my pocket was blinking wildly now, red and blue cycling back and forth in rapid succession. A warning, or maybe a countdown. I had to move. I started driving toward the only name left that held meaning anymore. Melissa Farrow. I didn't know what I hoped to find. A safe house? Answers? The last trace of her brother's humanity? I drove for hours, crossing into Massachusetts as the sun began to rise behind thick clouds. The GPS on my phone, my second burner, pointed toward a quiet suburb outside Boston. Her house was modest, blue siding, a wooden porch, wind chimes that didn't move even when the wind clearly blew. I parked across the street and sat for a minute watching the windows. I expected to feel paranoid. But what I felt instead was seen, as if someone inside was already watching me through the glass. I crossed the street, knocked once. The door opened before my hand fell. Melissa stood there. Same cautious voice, same sharp eyes from the photo. But now they were filled with something more than fear, recognition. "You look worse than he did," she said softly. "Victor?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, James." She stepped aside. "Come in." Her house smelled like paper, old candles, and a kind of sadness that had settled into the wallpaper. Books were stacked in uneven towers, notes pinned to the walls, crude sketches of star maps overlapping with what looked like hand-drawn neurons. "They're not separate," she said, catching my glance. "The stars and the brain. James said it was all part of the same structure. A web, a neural field, only on a galactic scale." I sat down at the kitchen table. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. She placed a chipped mug of tea in front of me. I didn't drink. "I saw them," I said. "The structures, the stars moved. They spelled out a message." She nodded slowly. "Then it's begun." "What's begun?" "Reconnection," she whispered. "You weren't meant to stay human, Daniel. None of you were. You were designed to become part of something larger." "I didn't agree to that," I snapped. "Didn't you?" she said. "They didn't make you forget. You did." You chose to forget, because you were here long enough to fall in love with what you became. I went cold. How do you know all this? She hesitated, then unbuttoned the cuff of her shirt. On her forearm was a series of faint, almost glowing symbols, the same triangles from the sky. They tried to make me one too, she said, but something went wrong. Or maybe... Right, I retained just enough to see them, but not enough to obey. She tapped her head. James said I was a fractured mirror, damaged, but clear. What happened to him? I asked. She looked away. He used the severance device, same one he left for you, but he didn't survive it. Her voice cracked slightly. It saved him from them, but it shattered everything else. I felt the scanner buzzing in my pocket, louder now, more frequent. They're getting closer, she whispered. How do I stop it? I asked. If the blue doesn't work, if the device only delays, how do I make it permanent? Her eyes locked on mine. You don't. That single word hit harder than I expected. You fight, but you don't stop it. Not for you. Not completely. She reached for a drawer and pulled out a map. On it, circled in red, was a point deep in the White Mountains. The signal started here, the original relay. Before Webb found the structures, before we named the galaxies, it's older than language. That's where they first made contact with the first observer. You think I'm the first? I asked. I think you were the last, Mike, she said. That night I stayed in Melissa's guest room. I didn't dream. But I woke to my reflection moving before I did. The mirror above the dresser showed me sitting up before I actually moved. My reflection's eyes glowed faintly. Its lips didn't mimic mine. They spoke. The network accepts your delay, but not your denial. Return, or we will come through you. The mirror cracked. I stumbled out of bed, drenched in sweat, and fumbled for the scanner. I pressed it against my skull, fingers trembling, and activated the blue frequency. The voice faded, but it left a scar. I looked into the mirror again, and this time it didn't show me at all, just a void of stars. And somewhere deep inside that darkness, a door opened. The road into the White Mountains was barely a road at all. More a suggestion carved between trees, winding up and up into fog-thick air. Melissa's map sat folded on the passenger seat, but I didn't need it anymore. The scanner pulsed steadily in my pocket, pointing me forward like a compass made of instinct or memory. Maybe both. It was morning, or close to it. The sun was rising behind a wall of pine trees, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch farther than they should. The forest breathed around me, ancient and quiet, as if even nature knew better than to disturb what waited up here. Somewhere beneath the roots and rock, beneath the layers of earth, was the relay, the first signal point, the origin, the place where it all began. And maybe, if Pharaoh was right, the place where it could end. I found the cabin just after 9 a.m. It looked like a forgotten ranger station, hidden behind a curtain of overgrowth and silence. Peeling green paint, a rusted antenna on the roof, no visible power lines, no road signs, nothing to mark it. Which made sense. It wasn't meant to be found. Inside, the air was stale, smelling of cedar and dust. I moved slowly through the main room, wooden floorboards groaning beneath my feet, until I found the trapdoor in the corner hidden beneath a faded rug, a single metal ring to pull it open. Beneath, darkness and a ladder. I took a breath. Then the bunker was cold, sterile, but alive. Solar-powered LEDs clicked on automatically as I reached the bottom. Rows of old computer equipment lined the walls, shelves of journals, all in Pharaoh's handwriting. The air buzzed faintly as if it carried the memory of conversation long since silenced, and in the center of it all, on a large table, was the model, the lattice, a scale replica of the structures seen in the Webb data, built from copper wire and fiber optic strands. It pulsed faintly with blue light, shaped like a three-dimensional web, bending in ways the human eye couldn't fully process. I stood in front of it and felt something stir behind my ribs. Recognition, not visual, cellular. This was the thing I'd seen across galaxies, the network, the living map. And here it was, humming quietly in a bunker beneath the Earth. A memory surfaced, one not my own, a star field, rotating slowly. Nodes lighting up, signals converging on a single point. Earth, we were never the center, we were the access point. At the far end of the room sat a metal case, different from the others. This one bore no label, but I knew what was inside, the broadcasting device, Pharaoh's final project. I opened it slowly. Inside was a sleek, compact mechanism, a fusion of old radio hardware and something else. Something. alien. Smooth alloy that didn't reflect light the way it should. A humming core that pulsed with blue energy. A terminal screen blinked on as I touched it. Initiate cascade protocol? The warning. Critical neural interference likely. My hand hovered over the input. This was the decision point. I could trigger it now. Broadcast the severance frequency across every available spectrum. Radio, satellite, underground networks. It wouldn't stop the network. Not entirely. But it would break the link. At a cost. Every human being partially connected, every pivot point like me, would suffer disorientation, memory loss, possibly worse. But their minds would be theirs again, even if some of them wouldn't remember who they were. I stepped back from the console because I had one more thing to do before pressing that button. I turned on the scanner and switched it to trace mode. The device buzzed and pinged softly, then beeped louder, pointing me toward a small room sealed off behind a steel door. Inside, I found a cot and a man, old, frail, wired to machines that blinked faintly with blue and red lights. His eyes were open but unfocused. His face familiar. James Farrow. He hadn't died. Not entirely. He was suspended in a kind of limbo. His mind too fragmented to reassemble, but his body still tethered to this world. His presence here, like a living ghost, was both tragic and holy. As I stood over him, his lips moved. Barely audible. Still. Time. I knelt beside him. Time for what? His eyes flickered. For a moment, the blue glow behind them vanished. His hand, weak and trembling, reached for mine. You are the bridge. Dan, end or begin. He closed his eyes and I knew he was gone. Not just unconscious. Gone. Back at the console, I stared at the blinking screen. Initiate cascade? I reached into my jacket and pulled out the scanner. Then I looked at Farrow's final journal. A note scrawled on the last page, barely legible. They harvest not the body, but the self. To save one mind is noble, to free many is necessary, but to return as a virus, to teach the system to forget us, that is the only way they lose. I understood. The signal I was about to send wouldn't just free people. It would infect the network with something it had never known before. Individuality. Choice. The one virus that no system, no matter how vast, could predict. I placed the scanner against the base of my skull, set it to maximum disruption, and with my other hand I pressed the button. Initiating. The room went white, then black, then... There are moments in life when you die without your body stopping, and then there are moments when your body stops, but something else keeps going. I don't remember the moment I pressed the scanner into the base of my skull, not really. I remember the cold metal, the final vibration, the hollow thud of the device hitting the floor when my hand went limp. And then, light. Not light like we know it. Not photons. Not even perception. This was recognition. I was inside something. No. Not inside. I was the something. I felt myself stretch beyond time, beyond self, until I was thought without voice, memory without language. I was Daniel Kearney and also not. I was the child who stared at stars and wondered what stared back. I was the voice in Victor's whisper, the trembling hand of Pharaoh, the fear behind Melissa's eyes. And then I was more. I was the signal. And I wasn't alone. The network saw me, felt me, and recoiled. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this, not aware. I was supposed to be absorbed, silently, unknowingly. But instead, I came back through the gate with purpose. And inside this place, this field of memory and design, I saw everything. The truth. The structures weren't weapons. They weren't prisons. They were roots. The network was a tree of minds. Millions of species linked across galaxies. A symphony of consciousness orchestrated across space and time. But there was one note missing. Us. Not because we weren't ready. Because we didn't follow the pattern. We broke it. Somehow, somewhere along the line, our minds fractured differently. We dreamed too vividly. We lied. We loved. We chose. Choice. That was the virus. That was what scared them. It wasn't that they couldn't harvest us. It was that we could say no. And once you say no, you can never go back. I floated, if floating was the word, through the corridors of the lattice, passing memories that weren't mine. Whole civilizations pulsed through the signal. Thoughts layered on thoughts, languages woven like thread. But then I heard it. Faint. Like a ripple under the waves. A voice. Dan? Victor? Clear as day. You're not done yet. A second voice followed. Melissa, give them something they can't erase. I knew what I had to do. Not destroy the network. That was impossible. But disrupt it. Change it. Infect it with the one anomaly it had never anticipated. A free human will. I thought of the stars, the real ones. the ones children wish on. I thought of music, laughter, the feel of cold air in your lungs after a snowfall. I thought of Melissa's face when she opened her door, of James Farrow's hand reaching for mine. I thought of Earth, and then I whispered a word into the network, not in English, not in sound, but in meaning. Remember. And just like that, something fractured. A node blinked, then another. Across the lattice, pulses went dark, not broken. Disconnected, and where once there was perfect harmony, now there was static. Beautiful, unpredictable static, a new sound in the chorus, the sound of freedom. I woke up gasping, not in the bunker, in a hospital. White lights, IV tubes. A heart monitor ticking softly beside me. A nurse rushed in, a voice shouted down the hall. Someone said, "He's awake." And then Melissa was there, older, eyes rimmed with tears. "You made it," she whispered, gripping my hand. I wanted to ask how long I'd been out, what had happened, but the words caught in my throat. She squeezed tighter. "You severed it, all of it. They're gone, Dan, or at least they can't reach us anymore. The signal's broken." I looked out the window. The sky was blue. But for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't look up and wonder who was watching. I just saw sky. Weeks passed. The world didn't change overnight. Most people never knew how close we came, how close we are. But here and there, quietly, people changed. They dreamed more vividly. They loved more fiercely. They chose more boldly. Because somewhere in the back of their minds, they remembered almost being someone else. And they remembered choosing not to be. I still feel echoes sometimes, like faint static behind a song, but it's distant now, weakened. I walk the earth as Daniel Kearney, human, fractured, whole. And if the network ever tries again, if the stars ever rearrange, or the signal pulses anew, I'll be waiting, not as an observer, not as a signal, but as a man who once looked into the heart of an ancient mind and said, "No, thank you for staying until the end. If this story made you think, feel, or question everything you know, then we've done our job." Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. We want to hear from you. What part of the story hit hardest? Your support helps us keep exploring the unknown. Until next time, stay curious, stay human.